So the Rebbe was discussing the difference between the Giluyim that the world has and the Gilui that was Nischadesh through Torah. And basically, we appreciate the Giluyim of Torah once we understand what the Gilui of the world on its own is. And the basic difference we discussed is that the Giluyim from the world comes through the Giluyim of Tzimtzum, is the oir that comes, the oir hakav that comes down in the kelim, and the Giluyim of Torah is from Ein Sof, which is higher than Tzimtzum. The Rebbe is going to explain now, going further, that even in Lifnei HaTzimtzum, the oir that comes through Torah is actually from Atzmus, even higher than the oir that is Lifnei HaTzimtzum. Because the idea, even the fact that in the Eibishter's Rotzen, before it actually was the Tzimtzum, in the Eibishter's Rotzen for a world, in his estimation, the Eibishter, what oir there should be so that there can be a world. That's sort of within Atzmus, within the Eibishter, the level of what can come down to the world, that the world can exist. That already, that thought is already considered to be part of the Giluyim of the world, because it's about the world. It's how much the world can take, even though it's before the Tzimtzum, but it's Lifnei HaTzimtzum, the estimation what's going to be after the Tzimtzum. And therefore, when we say the Gilu of Torah is higher, it's even higher than the Hash'ara, than the in Lifnei HaTzimtzum, in the Atzmus itself. Let's look inside. We'll see the Rebbe will explain this now. So he continues in the Maimer, the Hamedido Shebehakav, that when we talk about the measurement of the Kav measured the amount of oil that the world can tolerate, that it can come down. So, im hayoisa al yidei hatzimtzum kinal, although the measurement comes through the tzimtzum, which means that the Eibishter first removed, there was a siluk, the oir was removed, there was a restriction of the oir, and then your mamshich the kav. But shorsha hu ba'oirin sof shalifnei hatzimtzum. But the root of the kav's measure, where does the measurement come? It comes from before the tzimtzum. Before the tzimtzum, the Eibishter estimated what oir, how much oir can it come down? When it went up into his blessed will to create worlds, shi'er be'atzmai b'koyach, he imagined, or he estimated in himself, potentially, which means the tzimtzum was the act of restricting, taking away the light. But before he took away the light, he was mishayer, he estimated, he was calculated by himself potentially how much the world will be able to call everything what's going to take place actually after the tzimtzum. Bichdei, in order, he needed estimated b'chdei she'ishavu sa'olamos tiya k'fi she'ola b'rtzonu yisborech, so that the world creation, the world's being brought into being, should be as it is in his will, blessed will. So he had, at that time, in order for the world to be as Hashem wants, he estimated, he figured out in the beginning by himself what's going to be. So the Maimer explained that the Gam Shoirish Hamedida Shalifne Hatzimtzum. So now we're talking about the root of the measurement of the Kav. The Kav measures how much can come down. So that measurement is rooted in the measurement in Hashir Ba'atzme B'koyach, that the Eberste merit that was the Shirish Hamedida Shalifne Hatzimtzum, which is before the actual restriction. As the Rebbe says now in the parentheses, ha'hashore b'koyach, that potential, they estimate potentially for what's going to happen, v'gam aliyas rotzin, and also this rotzin to be the world to be, and how much oil that world should have. Hu b'chlal hagiluyim shebe'olamis. This is part, and this is called part of the Giluyim that comes down into the world. So now we've elevated the Gilui that is in world, because we're trying to figure out what's the Gilui that is higher than world, the Gilui of Torah. So now we have elevated the Gilui that is in world to even include the Ein Sof, which is before the Tzimtzum, the measure, the Hashara B'koyach, for what's going to happen b'poil. So, the Rebbe explains, Dagam sheklolu so'oir shelifnei hatzimtzum einoi be'erech ha'olamis. Although, generally speaking, the general oir lifnei hatzimtzum is not is not in the same at all, no comparison at all of the worlds. Ubichdei sheyumshech mimenu oir shebevichinas moker loilomis, and in order from the lifnei hatzimtzum, the oir lifnei hatzimtzum, to bring down, extend from there a light shebevichinas moker loilomis, an oir that'll be a source to oilomas oirakab. They're required to be a removal of the oil. That was the first symptom. You can't have the left over the oil. You need to make the siluk, remove the oil, the symptom, and then you're mamshich the level of the oil hakav mikol makom. So if we talk about generally, we say that oil shalifnei hatzimtzum is not connected to the worlds. The worlds cannot get from the earnest of shalifnei hatzimtzum. But when we look mikomokim b'atzmus gufa, but in the atzmus and by Hashem's the perspectives from atzmus kavayochel hu gilu sheshayich le'elamis, it's still a gilu that has a connection to worlds. Since over there the Eibishter estimates how much the world needs and the oir and Allah birtzoynoi, so within lifnei hatzimtzum ba'atzmusoi, that is an oir which is connected to the world. Gilu sheshayich le'elamis. So now we know that the gilu of Torah is higher than the gilu hashayich le'elamis. That's what the Rebbe Rashab explains. We understand from this even more. The great advantage of the Giluyim that is in Torah. The Al Yidei HaTorah, hu agilui the atzmus oir in sof shalamailo megeder shaychus loilomis. That through Torah, over there you have the gilui of the atzmus ein sof. Not in atzmus a gilui hashayich loilomis, but in the gilui of atzmus ein sof that is higher than having a connection to the worlds. So now we've elevated the level of Torah to the level of Atzmus Ein Sof, which is higher than the Shoresh of the Medida, the Hashara Bekoich within Atzmus Ein Sof, to the level of Atzmus Ein Sof. But we have L'choira a little bit of a difficulty with what it says in the Maimer. The Maimer seems to say that Torah brings down Ein Sof Lifnei HaTzimtzum, but we're saying even more than the Ein Sof Lifnei HaTzimtzum. We're saying the Ein Sof, we're saying that through Torah you're being Mamshich Atzmus. So why does the Rebbe Rashab and the Maimer say that the Gilui of Torah is to be Mamshich the Ein Sof Shel Lifnei HaTzimtzum? But we just said that through Torah, as the Rebbe just explained, that through Torah, we're mamshich the level of Atzmus, which is even higher than the level of just Lifnei HaTzimtzum, which includes the Hashara Bekoyach, which has a shaykhis to the world. So why does he say the Eiris of Lifnei HaTzimtzum? And the Rebbe explains now that when it says here Lifnei HaTzimtzum, doesn't just mean the Tzimtzum Harishon. We usually talk about the Tzimtzum Harishon, that in order to have the Kav, was Siluk Oir. The Rebbe is going to explain that there was a Tzimtzum, even in Atzmos, to have the Ashora Bekoyach, because that's already a Rotzim for Oilumos, that's also a Tzimtzum. Let's look inside. B'yashloimar, so we can say, the Mashakosu B'hamaimer B'tchilose. In fact, what the Maimer writes in the beginning, the Hakavon b'nesinas ha'toirahi lahamshich oirin sof shel lifnei tzimtzum, that the intent when the Eibishter gave the Torah is to be mamshich the oirin sof that comes before the tzimtzum. Hagam, although, why does he just say lifnei tzimtzum? Shaha'ilu the Torah hu, that the advantage of Torah hu shegam be'oirin sof shel lifnei tzimtzum gufa, even within the Ein Sof, that is before the Tzimtzum itself, Nimshach HaGilui the Atzmus Ein Sof Shelemaylo Meha Oira Shaykh Loilumis. Within, you get that in Lifnei Tzimtzum Gufa, we're getting the revelation of the Atzmus Ein Sof, which is higher than the Oir that is Shaykh Loilumis, which is the Hashara Bekoyach, which is already the idea, the Allah B'Ritzoyna from a world. So why does he just say Lifnei Tzimtzum? Because the Rebbe says it's a different Tzimtzum. Ukigam hamshochas ha'oir hashayich la'ilma shel Lifnei Tzimtzum. Even bringing down this oir that has a connection to the world before the Tzimtzum within Atzmus, here they Tzimtzum. That is also through a tzimtzum. So we're basically saying it's even that's also a tzimtzum. The fact, the that the hashara bekoyach gam ha'avshachas ha'era shaychlas lo tzimtzum yadei tzimtzum. Da gam shat tzimtzum shahaya ba'oir zeh hashayich lo ilumis. B'chlal we say that tzimtzum that was in this light that comes to the world. Nikra b'shem tzimtzum harishon. That's the first tzimtzum. The Rebbe said that's not really the case. It's not really the first tzimtzum is not in the Eir HaKav, which comes down to Shaykh Loilumis. Harimevur b'mokem achar, but it's explained elsewhere. Shegam lifnei tzimtzum harishon, that even before the first tzimtzum, hayu kama v'kama tzimtzumim, there were many tzimtzumim. So why were there many tzimtzumim? Because first we need the oil that belongs to the world from the oil that is higher than the world to go through a tzimtzum. But we also have a tzimtzum before that. The noise of lozeh shamshoch has oil hashayach le'oilomis, that to bring down the oil that is connected to the worlds, meha oil shelamaylo mishayches le'oilomis, from the oil, from the light, which is higher than having connection to the world, hiyadei tzimtzum kinal, that has to come through a tzimtzum, as we said before. Hinegam hamshochas ha'oil shelamaylo mishayches le'oilomis, also bringing down the oil, which is higher than being connected to the world. That's also the Ruach Tzimtzum. There's a Tzimtzum from the oil that is higher than Shayches Loilomes, also come through a Tzimtzum. Why? The Mikivon Shegam Oir Zeh Shelamaylo Meshayches Loilomes. Because even this light, which is higher than being connected to the world, it's in a way that it's extended revelation. And before this, it was included in the essence of the luminary mamish, was included in the essence of the Ein Sof. So to have oir, the fact that it's oir, it's higher than having a shayches lo'ilomis, but it's still an oir. It's an oir that is nimshach. It's nimshach, and it's considered an oir, and it's beyond the gather of the world. Yes, but it's still an oir. And before, it wasn't an oir. It was included in Atzmus Ein Sof, not even an oir. Ubefrat, the Rebbe adds here in the brackets, not only was it in Atzmus HaMoir, sheyesh loymar, shepirush zeh, shoyekolu ba'atzmus ha'or moir mamish. When we say that before it was included in Atzmus HaMoir, shoyekolu ba'atzmus shelemaylo metoir moir. It's included in the Atzmus, which is higher than even being described as the moir, as the luminary. So he uses the language, it was included in the essence of the luminary, but the Rebbe explains there's a higher level even than calling Atzmus a luminary, even than calling it Moir. We're saying that before it was included in Atzmus, even in a higher place than Atzmus is called Moir. And now you take that oil, which is in the Moir, or in the higher than Moir, and it comes down in Hamshocha. Yes, it's higher than Oilamus, it's higher than Tzimtzumim, but it's still a level of oil. It needs a Tzimtzum, Harim. Move on. The Hamshochas ha'oil shebechinas gilui, to bring down an oil in a revealed way. Ma'oil hakolu ba'atzmus ha'moir, from the light which is included in the essence of the moir. Hiyadei tzimtzum otzum. That's a powerful tzimtzum. So basically, the Rebbe is saying, it doesn't help me that this oir is higher than oilamis. Normally we say that from higher than oilamis to come into oilamis, we need a tzimtzum. The oir hakav, which comes from lifnei tzimtzum, needs a tzimtzum, the tzimtzum arishon. But the Rebbe says, no. There is also from the oir that is lifnei tzimtzum. For it to be an oir, the way it comes from atzmus, when it comes from the moir, or even higher than the moir, must go through a powerful tzimtzum. So the Rebbe is mechadesh. So when the Rebbe Rashab writes in the beginning of the Maimer that the idea of Torah is to bring beyond the tzimtzum, it doesn't just mean the tzimtzum that it has to go through to create the world, but the tzimtzum that it has to go through to bring an oir. And the Torah is megala lemailo from that tzimtzum. So he says, yesh loymar. Based on this, we can say, the ma'ashe kosu b'hamaymer. that what the Maimer writes, Shehakavone b'nisinas haTorah, that the intent when the Eibishter gave the Torah is lahamshich ha'oir shalifnei hatzimtzum, to bring down the oir that is before the tzimtzum. Hakavone b'zehi, what he means with this is loy rak leha'oir shalifnei tzimtzum harishon. It doesn't mean just the oir to be mamshich lifnei tzimtzum harishon, because the Rebbe asked, Torah is even a higher level. But when he says a higher tzimtzum, it doesn't mean the tzimtzum harishon. Elagam leha'oir shalifnei kol hatzimtzumim. But it means the oir which is before the tzimtzumim. So basically, the Rebbe just elevated in this piece over here, telling us that Torah, as the Rebbe said before, is mamshich, a higher level, even than the level of hashara b'koyach, even of the level of the hamshochas, the gilu ha'oir, from atzmus, which is higher. That comes down through Torah, because that's really the gilu, which is not shaykhis to the oilumas at all. Even the oir lifnei hatzimtzum, as it's hashara b'koyach, that's still connected. And when we say in the Maimer that we bring down lifnei hatzimtzum, we're talking about bringing down the level of atzmus ein sof, maybe even higher than the moyer, as he says, higher than the description of moyer. And now the Rebbe is going to explain a part in the Maimer, which is a little bit, it seems, what is the Rebbe Rashab saying over there? The Rebbe Rashab says Parshas HaChodsh was said after Yitzias Mitzrayim. He explains Parshas HaChodsh after Yitzias Mitzrayim, when we already have the Gilui of Torah. Maimer, the point of the Maimer is HaChodsh Hazeh Lochem already gets that Gilui, that higher Gilui, the Gilui from Atzmus comes in already in HaChodsh Hazeh, because that's after Yitzias Mitzrayim that starts. Problem is HaChodsh Hazeh Lochem was said in Mitzrayim. And the Rebbe will explain now that when it means it's said after Yitzias Mitzrayim, he's not talking about the Yitzias Mitzrayim that actually took place. Yes, of course, this was still a Mitzrayim. But in Torah, Yidden already went out in Mitzrayim the way Mitzrayim is in Torah. We have to think about Mitzrayim the way it was actually physically when the Yidden were in Mitzrayim. But we have to think about Mitzrayim the way it's in Torah. This HaChodsh Hazeh Lochem comes after the Yitzias Mitzrayim of Torah, and over there they reach that level. And as we'll see, in the level of Torah, that's already in the level of higher than Tzimtzum. HaChodsh Hazeh Lochem comes even is a Yitzias Mitzrayim from the level of Torah, because all of Torah, even before the Parshas HaChodsh, is already higher than the world, higher than Tzimtzum. However, over there it's still a Shaykh Loilamos. Chodesh Hazeh Lochem is in the level of Atzmus. Let's look inside. It's very interesting. Based on this, we can explain Gam Mashekosu b'Hamaimer, also what the Maimer says, Sheparshas HaChodesh Nemro Miyad Acharei Yitzias Mitzrayim. Maimer says that the portion of HaChodesh was said as soon after they left Mitzrayim. L'cheira Tomua, that is surprising. Harei Mefurish B'Kro, it says very clearly in the Pasuk, Sheparshas HaChodesh Nemar Be'eretz Mitzrayim, that the Parshas HaChodesh was said in Eretz Mitzrayim. That's what says in the pasuk. In Boyud Beis Aleph, the Rebbe brings down. It says beferish in the pasuk with Mitzrayim, Eretz Mitzrayim. So how does the Rebbe Rashab say that Parshas HaChodesh is after Yitzias Mitzrayim? The Rebbe Rashab is trying to say that after Yitzias Mitzrayim, we went to the higher level from the level of the world to the level of Torah, because it's already started with Parsha Chodesh, but Chodesh was still in Mitzrayim. So the Rebbe says, so we can say, the Ma'ashekosu ba'Maimer sheParshas HaChodesh Nemro la'achrei Yitzias Mitzrayim, where the Maimer says that it was said after Yitzias Mitzrayim. Hakavonehi, what does he mean? La'achrei Amiras v'Sipri Yitzias Mitzrayim. After saying and telling us the story of the Exodus of Egypt, the Torah, in the Torah, the HaChodesh comes after the story, not after the factual exit of Mitzrayim, but the story of Yitzias Mitzrayim. Yitzias Mitzrayim k'moishu b'Torah. The exit, as it's in the Torah, after the parshas of Yitzias Mitzrayim. After it says in the Torah, all the instruction, the commands, the demands in the Torah to Pare. Sheyishlach es Yisrael miMitzrayim, to send Yisrael out of Mitzrayim, ad la'asro achroina de Makas b'Chodesh, until the final warning of Makas b'Chodesh. Shel achrei zeh, Omar Pare tzei ato v'cholo gomer. After that, Pare said, go out. Now, he hasn't yet said it in the Parsha, but after all after Makas b'Chodesh, so in Torah, we have already all the Yitzias Mitzrayim, because after Moshe Rabbeinu warned him, and after the Makas b'Chodesh, he actually said, say. So in Torah, that means already Yitzias Mitzrayim in Torah. So immediately after saying Yitzias Mitzrayim, it says the Parsha Chodesh. So what's the idea over here? The Mailas Hagilui de Torah al Hagilui de Oilamos Hamuveres b'Maimer Zeh. This Maimer explains the advantage of the revelation of Torah over the revelation of the world before Torah, that is explained in this Maimer. Higam al Hagilui de Oilamos K'moshu b'Torah. We're also talking the Maila of Torah, not only on what happens in the world actually, but even what happens in the world as it's in Torah. There is the Gilui in Torah while you're in Mitzrayim, the world, and then there is the Gilui in Torah which comes after HaChodesh Hazeh. We're not talking about only the actual happening of Yitzias Mitzrayim. We're talking about what's happening after the Torah relates about Yitzias Mitzrayim. This is what it brings in the Maimer. Mashekosuv Rashi, that Rashi says, Lo yoyo tzorich la'aschilas ha'Torah elam ha'chodesh hazeh lochem u'matam posach b'Bereishis. The Torah should have started from ha'chodesh hazeh lochem. Why does it start with Bereishis? So we're talking about not creation of the world. We're talking about Bereishis, the way the Torah records the story. Shegam inyan de Bereishis bara. That also the idea of Bereishis bara. Val derech zeh sipur de Oves v'chulu. Even that. So all the whole Chumash Bereishis, and the up to HaChodesh. K'moshu b'Torah hu rak k'mo yakdom leParsha HaChodesh. That's only introduction in Torah to Parsha HaChodesh. The Parsha zu hi ikaras cholos HaTorah. This Parsha is the main beginning of Torah. V'lochein, and therefore, gam b'hanegeya le'inyan Yitzias Mitzrayim, shehu hachona l'matan Torah. So also as it relates to the idea of Yitzias Mitzrayim, that is a preparation to Torah. So Yitzias Mitzrayim within the story of Torah, because the Bereishis bara, everything is within Torah itself. So the idea of Yitzias Mitzrayim, which prepares Matan Torah, and we want to say the Giluyim already start with Yitzias Mitzrayim, Meduber ba'maimer al derech ha'inyan the Yitzias Mitzrayim k'meshu b'Torah. The Maimer discusses as Yitzias Mitzrayim as it is in Torah. So basically, when the Maimer says HaChodesh Hazeh was said after Yitzias Mitzrayim, he means after the story of Yitzias Mitzrayim, the way it's recorded in Torah. We have Yitzias Mitzrayim the way it happened, but then we have Yitzias Mitzrayim that way it's in Torah. The whole Maimer is discussing here that from the Parsha of HaChodesh Hazeh starts a new Gilui in Torah, even higher than the Gilui in Torah before the Parsha of HaChodesh Hazeh. That now there starts the Gilui from after Yitzias Mitzrayim, which is the Gilui of Torah, which is the higher level. So v'yesh l'kasher inyan zeh. So now we're going to tie this to this other idea that Rebbe spoke before, that the Gilui of Torah is the Gilui in Atzmos, because in Torah, even before Yitzias Mitzrayim, it's still a Gilui which is higher than world in general. But from HaChodesh Hazeh, it gets the Gilui of Atzmos, which is even higher than the Gilui of higher than Olamus. V'yesh l'kasher inyan zeh. We can tie this Hagilui de Torah, hu l'mayla yoser, gam Hagilui de Olamus k'moshu b'Torah, that the revelation of Torah that starts with HaChodesh Hazeh is higher than the Gilui of the world as it is in Torah, which is up to HaChodesh Hazeh. We can tie this in Mashin Isbar Le'il Sif Dalet, what we explained Sif Dalet, Shagilu the Torah, who Atzmus Oirin Sof, Shalamayla Mekol HaTzimtzumim, that it's the level of Atzmus, which is higher than all Tzimtzumim, Gam HaTzimtzumim Shalifnei Tzimtzum HaRishon, also from the Tzimtzumim that come before the Tzimtzum HaRishon. So, we can connect Api HaYadua based on what we know. The Klolus Kolat Torah, that Torah in general. Gam Sipurei HaTorah Shelifnei Parshas HaChodesh, also the story of the Torah that precede Parshas HaChodesh, Kodma L'Olam, they're also Kodma L'Olam. Because when we say Torah Kodma L'Olam, it doesn't say Chodesh Hazeh is Kodma L'Olam. All of Torah, all the stories of Torah are higher than the world. Umikivan das choles inyan ha'olam hu mitzimtzum harishon. Where does the idea of olam start? It starts from the first tzimtzum. HaTorah shekodma l'olam. So therefore Torah is kodma l'olam. Hi be'eres sof shelifnei ha'tzimtzum. It's in the eres sof that's before the tzimtzum. So all of Torah, even before HaChodesh, is before the tzimtzum. This v'seira mezu yesh loymar, even more than just lifnei ha'tzimtzum. The kibon shegam be'ha'oir shel lefnei hatzimtzum yesh kvar hascholos shoresh hamedita doilums. The Rebbe says that even in the oir lefnei hatzimtzum, that hashore in the atzmos, there is already a beginning of the root for the measure of world, because shir ba'atzme bekoyach mashir bepoil. So when we said ha'toira shekodme la'olam hi ba'oir shebebchinas gilui la'atzmai. That's in the oil which is a gil la'atzmai shelamayla m'shaychs la'ilmas. It's even higher than the shir bekoyach. It's in the oil which is a gil la'atzmai, which is higher than shaychs la'ilmas. It's even higher than the shir atzmai bekoyach. That's also in the story of the Torah. That's before the Parsha Chodesh. Va'ilu, the Parsha Chodesh, Iker Hascholos HaTorah, Hu Hagilu the Atzmus Sof Shelifnei Kol HaTzimtzum. Now, what is the advantage of Parsha Chodesh, which is the main beginning of the Torah, is the revelation of Atzmus Sof, which is before all of the Tzimtzumim. We have like 5 more minutes left. Can you stick another 5 minutes?
No problem. No problem.
No problem. Okay.
No problem.
Okay. So let's just finish up. This is like Kabbalic. I mean, understanding the Madregas, but I see what the Rebbe is saying, the mile of Torah. So Acharat Tzimtzum, Achar Parshas HaChodesh, which is the main Gilui of Torah. over there we get the level of Atzmus, the Moir, which is even higher than the Oir, which is the Gilu La'atzmai. But before that, we actually have not only Kodma La'olam, the Rebbe says to add to it, it's not only that it's higher the Shaykh La'olam, that it's higher than the Shir La'atzmai, and that's in the level of Oir, which is in La'atzmai, not in the Medida as a Sherish La'olamas. But the main Torah, which begins with Chodesh Hazeh Lochem, over there is the level of the Moir Atzmai. Vav. Bezohu HaChodesh Hazeh Lochem Rosh Chodashim. And this idea of the Chodesh is Rosh Chodashim. The Bechodesh Nisan hu Hagilu Da'atzmus Ein-Sof. That in the month of Nisan is the revelation of the Atzmus Ein-Sof. Bezohu, and this is the Rebbe started the minor. Shegia Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Once Rosh Chodesh Nisan comes, Ein Ma'abrin Es Hashanah. We don't make the month a new month. It's already going to stay. Rosh Chodesh Nisan stays. Why? Because the level of Shana year, that means that represents the world, the light that has a connection to the world. And so when we talk about the Oir, which is Shaykh La'olamas, it's an Oir who Aidei Ha'alos Man, that comes through the elevation of the Mayim Nukvim, that comes through the Avodah Lamato, which can be Mamshich and Oira Shaykh La'olamas. So therefore, Ma'abrinas Hashana L'Tzeirach. So when there's a need for the year, for that Alos Man, you can make the year bigger because you still need to make the Halah B'chdei Shetiya Halos Man Tikuktuno. So the Halos Mayim Nukvim should be properly, you make Halos Man. Lochem. Kshegia Rosh Chodesh Nisan. But once Rosh Chodesh Nisan comes, we're not talking anymore about the light which is Shaykh to the Olamas, the Oira Shaykh's Olamas, to the Shana. Here we're talking about Hagilui, the Atzmus Oira in Sof. We're talking about the revelation of the Atzmus Oira in Sof, which is higher than Surus Tato. Ein Ma'abrin as Hashanah. We cannot make anymore. We don't need to deal with changing the year because it's not anymore about the Mayim Nukvim. It's not anymore about the Surus Tato. Kimevur Ba'arucha Ba'amaymer is explained on less than the Mayim. Bezohu, the Rebbe says, Gama Shechodesh Nisan u'Chodesh HaGeula. Chodesh Nisan is called the month of redemption. The Benisan Nigalu, Benisan Asidim Legoya. We said that the Yidden were the first time around, they were redeemed out of Mitzrayim in Nisan, and also Benisan, they are going to be redeemed. Ki inyan HaGeulahu, because what does redemption mean? Sha'oz Yiyah V'lo Yikonafayid Merecha. That then with the Geula, then your master, the Eberster, will not hide anymore. It will be a Gilu, the Atzmus Ein Sof, Belishum Levush, the revelation of Atzmus Ein Sof, with no garment, no konof, no yukonof, not be hidden. It will be revealed. Because then we will get the revelation on the Chodesh Nisan when we get the level of Atzmus Ein Sof. So the bottom line is that in the month of Nisan, in the Torah from HaChodesh Hazeh, in the actual month of Nisan, we have the Gilu of Atzmus. V'yirotzin, shekol zeh yiyeh b'meir b'meinu mamish. The will, this should all be very quickly in our days, mamish. B'chodesh Nisan, the Shana Zu mamish, in the month of Nisan, actually this year, the noichal shom min azvochim and min apsochim, then we'll eat from the korbanos, from the zvochim, from the shlomim, from the psochim, with joy and gladness of heart. Okay, we'll leave it over here, and we'll be back tomorrow, Be'ezer Hashem.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.